My name is Åshild. I come from Oslo. I work for a company called arkitekter. And this is me. I've been in MAD for 15 years now. And we are a Norwegian interdisciplinary architectural office working in several fields, approximately 100 people. We work with urbanism and architecture, interiors, landscape architecture, neighborhood planning. And our most recent adventure is by MAD. That's our own cafe bar. So if you are ever in Oslo, please come to visit. We work with a broad range of projects, as I said, in all scales. Public buildings, libraries, new faculty of law in Oslo, city repairs and urbanism, big residential projects. And over the last years, we have worked more and more with transformation. Yeah, this is us. Our people is the most important, they are essential to the output of our projects. And our end goal is, of course, always to contribute to a better society. Okay, I'll be very short with a quick intro of some of the challenges that we see in today's building industry. I won't dwell on these, but we should face that the building industry have a great impact on many of these goals and a great responsibility. Over the last decades, the building industry has tried to change radically to make buildings more sustainable. But the focus has almost always been on energy and technology. And we demolish buildings like never before to replace them with new ones. More energy efficient, maybe, or with better technology. And we can't continue on this path, we all know that. We have seen that when we construct a building, in the old days, we might have needed about 50 different materials or components to construct one building, like wood and brick and steel and glass and so on. Buildings of today require an extreme amount of materials or components, and we can choose from millions. This is an installation by Muuhulgas from 2014 in Venice Biennale, and I think this image just says more than 1,000 words. And how did we end up like this? The amount of components is one of the reasons and one of the problems of the great amount of waste in the building industry. These are just examples of outer walls. And the linear economy has given us materials that come with an assembly instruction. And suddenly we have installers instead of craftsmen. And we think that the simpler way, or the old-fashioned way of building, would be possible also today, but it needs a higher level of competence, both by the designers and the builders. Okay, I'll show you some thoughts about what I think would be the buildings of the future. There might be more aspects to this. First of all, we all know that, or we are told that about 80 or maybe more % of the tomorrow's buildings are already here. And to not demolish buildings is great for sustainability. And it can also give our architecture and our cities a great and important historical and identical continuity. This is an example from Bergen in Norway, a transformation project finished 2017. And I hope tomorrow's buildings will be erected with higher quality than we have seen over the last decades. This is one of our projects in Oslo. This is a new build for the University of Oslo. And I think I find it interesting. This is sitting between some older buildings. And I find it interesting because everyone says that old buildings are beautiful. And yes, they are, I agree. But one of the reasons that they are beautiful is that all the ugly buildings of the past are gone. Because they weren't flexible enough, they didn't have enough quality, they didn't have the technical value to keep them, and so they are gone. And we are left with the best of the past. And I hope that we will continue to build higher quality for the future. If you look at living space and square meters per person, at least in Northern Europe, it has increased dramatically over the last years. And that means that the effect of less energy for our buildings is neutralized by higher consumption, which is a problem, of course. This is an example of our, one of our earlier Oslo projects. It's a housing block with a quite special format. It's only 7 meters wide and 90 meters long, and it had some challenges due to square meters. And if we really want to cut our source of, or our use of resources and build better societies, we need to use our buildings more. We need to use them for more hours during the day and for more purposes. Because the most sustainable square meters are the ones that we don't build. And that cuts emissions in all stages. I just want to mention low-tech buildings also. I enjoyed the previous presentation, although I didn't understand one word. I loved the drawings, and I could understand some of the concepts. We haven't worked much with this yet. We hope to work with it someday. Our colleagues in Switzerland have come far. I just wanted to mention it. And then there is reuse and recycling. And in Norway, we in Mad Architects are leading in this field. And I will tell you a bit more about one of our groundbreaking projects of reuse soon. Just want to show you this as well. This is in Norwegian, but it reads, wants to build housing blocks out of garbage. And this is our group CEO, Nikolai. And Mad, we're on the front page of the papers. And when my husband saw this, he's also an architect. And then he said, so you're going to build it from a different kind of garbage than you usually do. And I thought it was very funny. I'm going to go into one of our projects to break the tradition of resource use in the building industry. We designed this project for a developer called Entra, one of the biggest private real estate investors in Norway. And they have a high focus on environmental sustainability. Spaces is the tenant of the building. They are an international co-working space company. And they have been really important for the realization of this project. KA13 is located in the city center of Oslo. Since this drawing is made by an architect, you have no idea where it is. But this is the royal castle up here. And yeah, this is the parliament. And so it's in the middle, city center. And many people think that this project is a big project. It's not. It's quite small, but it has made a great impact. It's a modest office building from 1950s, and it was part of an area marked for demolition. On the left, we see the original facade of the building, and I think you all agree that it's quite uninspiring. The existing building had several challenges, including quite low ceiling heights and a long and narrow site, which can be a challenge for having good daylight quality. And we did a number of studies on how to utilize this site in the best possible way. But we also saw the potential of the building as it was. And to put it short, we could have built a new building, but the amount of square meters wouldn't have increased very much. So that's the story behind that we kept the building. But once we were inside, we were struck gold, and we found very nice and high-quality interiors. And we had a simple and flexible floor plan, which could be great for modern office space. And you see, yeah, there's the typical plan with existing building and the new extension, and some of the interior photos. With these discoveries, we decided to preserve the existing structures, and we simply added a new extension to increase the project's capacity and, of course, square meters. We built a new 8-story extension with reused building components, and those are sourced from many rehabilitation and demolition sites across Norway. Here we see the building from the back side, from the courtyard side, and the yellow and terracotta facades are the existing building. And that more playful facade is the extension, highlighting the fact that this is somehow a bit unusual building. The programming remained the same with offices on all floors. We included a bar and some new functions on the street level, but all in all, it's an office building. We had different material flows in the project. We preserved the existing building, of course, with all its components and materials within, which we would call local reuse. And we reused materials from other buildings, which were under rehabilitation or set for demolition. And even in a circular project, some things go into the circle and some things have to go out. Of course, with harmful materials and some healthy materials sold for reuse. So how does this process work? We have been working with reuse and transformation buildings for quite some time, and we have got useful skills and experiences. But reusing single building components, as done in this project, is something quite different. And we made this diagram before we actually embarked upon this journey. And we tried to convince the market that reuse is doable and to help plan the process. And after the project, I'll show you in a while, we saw that this is a bit too simple, a bit naive. We thought it would be something like this, and it was, it was more like this. I won't go through this in detail, but you see the chain. It's dependent on many different processes and decisions and stakeholders. This is a typical for Windows. Yeah, I don't have time to go through it, but it's many different considerations made, and in the end it goes to the owner, and they say maybe they say yes, and if they say yes, they go back to us as an architect, and then we have to implement it into our drawings. Of course, I guess you understand this. The amount of information is enormous. And the process diagram that we made before the start is more relevant as an overview of the new building industry and its many business opportunities. Examples: registering, developing databases, demounting, buying and selling, and logistics and storage and testing and certifying, adjusting, industrialization of the process. I think this will go fast. We have learned now from the last 4 years. We started this in 2018. It has developed a lot in Norway and in many other countries. Regarding the architectural concept, in order to maximize the daylight, we decided to make an atrium and a large skylight with vertical openings through all the existing floors and the skylight on top. And behind paintings and plasterboards and a lot of different materials, we found a bit of everything, including colorful old tiles, which have been taken care of and restored. But then there was the other materials from other buildings. How to find reused building materials? This was one of the first challenges that we faced. There was no marketplace for buying and selling, especially not for large-scale components. So we created our own network. And here you can see the sources for the reuse elements. They come from more than 25 different buildings and sites. And a small selection of components that we reused, from ceiling panels to doors. This is a figure of a typical plan. The yellow is existing and the extension is in blue. I'll go through some of the components. The government headquarters in Oslo are currently under redevelopment after the terror attacks in 2011. And a number of buildings are being condemned or set for demolition as a part of the new plan. And the hollow core slabs in the new extension are sourced from one of these buildings. There were several different challenges with engineering and logistics and cost, but it has shown that it's possible to reuse structural elements. And I can mention that these reused slabs resulted in 89% lower emissions for this specific component. And it's important to note also that it has already been saved. It's not something that we prospect into the future, like we do with energy calculations. Yeah. Steel structures, approximately 70% of the steel structures are reused steel. And mostly they are bolted together so that they won't, and not welded. So it's possible to demount and use somewhere else in the future. When this building's life cycle comes to an end. We reused brick. This is a load-bearing firewall, and in standard procedure for this kind of building, it would have been concrete. But we decided to make it out of reused steel and brick. And this is a typical construction from my colleague Trond. He loves this wall because it's like the old German constructions, like outer walls of brick and wood. And it has become an interesting wall that people like. We got the windows from another project, and they had ordered and received incorrect windows. So this is surplus materials. It was a big housing project in Oslo, and they received windows that couldn't be opened, which is a problem for housing. It's a bit easier for office buildings. And to the left, you can see the original facade sketch with quite regular windows. But we had to adjust it because we didn't know the format. And these processes didn't really coincide. So we had to make a rhythm for the windows that could adjust to different kinds of formats. And this, it exemplifies the difference from a conventional design approach. And it has made the facade a bit strange, but it could have looked even stranger. The facade panels were sourced from 3 different buildings, 2 in Oslo and 1 in Trondheim. The plates were trimmed to smaller sizes, 40 by 40 centimeters. Some of them got painted and then mounted on the facade in quite traditional way. We love this facade not only because it's a bit different from many other, but also because it's flexible and you can change parts of it and adjust, and you can take it down and use it in another building without any big problems. You can vary the colors and you can mix it all together. We worked a lot with this, both in the design phase and on site. Yeah, you can see the donor building over there. Maybe we should have kept the graffiti. The bathroom tiles, most of them are surplus materials. We called tile supplier and they said, yes! And then we got 15 pallets of tiles to the building site. And we just had to choose on site, you know. We couldn't make any schemes or any details or anything. We just had to choose them and lay them out and build, which was wonderful. And the result is kind of refreshing. Every one of these rooms are unique. And I think we would have wished to find more colorful tiles, you know, because they're only like beige and black and grey for the time being. But anyway, it looks good. The further we delved into the detailing and construction phase, we became more aware of the importance and the need for highly skilled craftsmen. This amphitheater you see on the right is made of timber handrails from this building you can see on the left. It's a swimming pool building in Oslo that was demolished recently. The original plan was actually to build this staircase or amphitheater out of glulam slabs from a school in Oslo that was set for demolition because it had some damages. But then the demolition of this school was postponed, and we couldn't get the materials in time. So then we had to think of another way. And my colleague saw these handrails in the swimming pool, and we thought, oh, there's a lot of pine timber. So we glued all of this together, and it has become this beautiful staircase. Yeah. Old steel grating panels. This is a floor in a technical room in the same swimming pool building. We often get asked, isn't it boring? Isn't it difficult? But it's very, very exciting. And to find new functions and new use for elements and to put them into a new context can be a very creative experience. These were flipped and became railing. And it looks easy, but these workers were swearing a lot when they mounted these. We also had some new elements into the building. These are office partition walls in massive timber, made in Norway. We designed them as modular blocks. They are about 20 centimeters wide, and you can put them together. You have a line on top and on the floor, and you just skew them together. And then they go click, and you can demount them without tools, and you can put them somewhere else, which is very useful for this Spaces company that are the tenant, because they rent out different spaces and they have to move, or they want to move the walls many times during the year. So it's practical for them. And this is kind of a prototype. We have them also in our office. And they are quite nice. Sometimes when I'm in a meeting or a Teams meeting in our office, people ask like, "Oh yeah, so you're in the mountains?" And I'm like, "No, I'm at the office," which is great. Yeah, this is some more pictures of it. We added some new functions and some new with recycled textiles for acoustics and stuff like that. Okay. A bit about rules and regulations. Norway has one of the most stringent building codes in the world and has a very strict interpretation of the EU rules regarding construction product regulation and the CE marking. And in terms of the CE marking, not all materials need this CE marking. Some materials are not defined as construction products, and therefore they don't need this accreditation, neither new nor used. An example of this is moldings or upcycling of materials. For example, if you use windows as partition walls. An interesting experience is also that many people think that if you talk about reuse of building materials, you talk about old materials, which is not really the case. In the market for quite new building materials set in buildings that are changing, it should be great. It's not really now, but it will be in a few years, I'm sure. On top of the EU regulations, we have national building codes. Yeah. And in some cases, we found that the documents in the archive or the material documentation could fulfill the requirements. But for other materials, we found it necessary to develop new quality control for or procedures and test methods in order to create the new documentation for this. And it was difficult in different aspects and different materials. I think the most difficult was maybe the concrete, so the hollow core slabs. The steel was a bit easier, of different reasons. I can tell you more about that, but I will keep going. When it came to the application process with Oslo municipality, we entered the dialogue with them before sending in the application. And we explained the project's aims and ambitions. We really had no idea how this would look. So, but we had a clear concept for the building size, of course, and the volumes. The colors and details was not really finished, but we got the confidence, and the council were supportive, and they showed flexibility, and they trusted us, which was great. So we agreed that we would send updated facade drawings before starting the building, and it was okay. So that's good. So what were the results? By preserving the existing building and adding the new extension in reused materials, it had an enormous impact. A 70% reduction in CO2 emission compared to a conventional building or a conventional rehab and extension. If you look at specific materials, such as windows and cooling machines and concrete and steel, you are much higher. You are about 90% less emission. And this project was followed by many master students in Trondheim who could do research on all of this. Entra, the developer, and FutureBuilt have also made a full report about this project and has all the documentation. Right now it's only in Norwegian, but we have decided to translate it, and it's full of figures and facts and illustrations, and it will be possible to read soon. You can find it on futurebuilt.no, but I don't think the translation is ready yet, but it will be soon. So we are witnessing a revolution in the building industry. And the fact that we could build an 8-story building with reused materials in the heart of Oslo, bound by some of the strictest building requirements, regulations in the world, by a private developer and a private tenant, international. It proves that the concept of reuse is not only realistic, but it can also be feasible and really attractive. And it has, for us, it's made a huge step towards a new way of working. At the end, I would like to share some of my reflections or advice or some experience to give from this. People have reused building and building materials for thousands of years. It's just that the last 60 or 70 years we have totally forgot how to do it. Yeah, as I said, I think it's possible to build simpler and to build with better materials also for modern buildings. With transformation comes unpredictability. And we think that we as architects and consultants need more responsibility for making new solutions and for working with innovation. I get annoyed that so much of the building industry is pre-accepted. It has pre-accepted solutions. I think the future is not pre-accepted. And innovation needs a certain freedom to make and a certain responsibility. An important experience is also that people ask me, is it expensive? Is it more expensive or is it cheaper? And most people think that it's more expensive, and yes, it is. But the difference is great between the different materials. Some are expensive, some are cheap, some are for sale in great amounts, and some you have to search for. Some need a high degree of manual work, and others almost nothing. An interesting experience is also that, like I said before, you would think that reused materials is about old materials, which is not necessarily the case. The glass facade on street level in K13 is taken from this building in Oslo. It's a CBD building, only 9 years old, but they change all the time and sooner than you think. And we have actually now, just a few days ago, I was in a presentation with Entra, the owner of this building, and also another building that we have designed in Trondheim. It was finished like 2 years ago, and that has become a donor building now for another project, which makes my heart really warm. Find methods to convince the clients about reuse. And our experience is that the most effective way here is to find out how they can spend less or get more income, to sell instead of deposit, to reuse instead of buying new material. It's not easy, but always search for the possibilities. These pics are from another project, another existing office building just nearby. And the client wanted to demolish it and replace it, preferably as tall or possibly taller than the existing one. But as it dawned upon them that the Oslo municipality would never allow this height in a new building, the fate of this building was sure. If you work with innovation, you'll know that it requires taking on new roles and, as we say, new hats. Be brave and don't expect anyone else to do the job. Search for new business opportunities and new niches and new fields of work. And keep it on a practical level. We who work with reuse, we are a bit worried that people will start working with this on a very theoretical or digital level. These doors were offered to us as reused materials, but they were demounted without attention that to the fact that the door consists of both a door and a frame. And you need to know these things. And it's not complicated, but it's necessary to know. And we as architects have to spread the knowledge and to collaborate, and of course also ask a lot of questions to all the people that we need to collaborate with in the building industry to develop this. A circular building industry will require great competence and a new kind of commitment and collaboration between the designers and the engineers, but also with the contractors and the craftsmen. It requires craftsmanship and not assembly. This this pile of construction material was demounted from this building, from KA13. And when we were there together, it came to a kind of a spontaneous brainstorming, what to do with this. And the contractor suggested that we could make floor out of it, or many different suggestions. But I was standing there and I thought, you wouldn't get this out of a database. You need to feel the materials. You need to know how to work with it, to be able to have any idea what to do with it. And I think in a circular economy, the wise hands and working with the hands will be just as important as artificial intelligence. New developments should be regenerative, built on a foundation or understanding that of what is already there, and adding to the health and sustainability and biodiversity of their context. And we have more local resources than we think. And we should combine it always with local knowledge. And we need to make a shift in how we build and have greater focus on quality, both in buildings and in building components. Products with high quality will last longer and can be reused later. The best buildings are also reused. And beautiful buildings are valued, conserved and adapted, outliving their original function. And I think beauty might be one of the most important criteria for a sustainable and a circular building industry. Thank you.